Hello once again and welcome to the 11th module of our lecture discussions for today, and we will be discussing sustainable development. So let's start. So what is sustainable development? Sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. Now, it contains within the two key concepts. Ano yung two key concepts? You have the concept of the needs, in particular, the essential needs of the world's poor to which overriding priority should be given. And the second one is the idea of limitations imposed by the state of technology, social organization, and on the environment's ability to meet the present and future needs. Okay, so thus, the goal of the economic and social developments must be defined in terms of sustainability in all countries, developed or developing, market-oriented or centrally planned. Interpretations will vary, no? It will vary lang, but must share the certain general features and must flow from a consensus on the basic concept of sustainable development and on a broad strategic framework for achieving it. Okay, so when you say development, it involves a progressive transformation of economy and society. Kasi dito makikita kung nagpo-progress ba yung economy at yung society natin, no? A developmental path that is sustainable is in a physical sense could theoretically be pursued even in a rigid social and political setting. But physical sustainability can be secured unless development policies pay attention to such considerations as changes in access to resources and the distribution of the cost and benefits. Now, even the narrow notions of physical sustainability implies a concern for social equity between generations, a concern that must be logically extended to equity within each generations. Okay, moving on. Excuse me. The concept of sustainable development. So the satisfaction of human needs and aspirations in the major objective of development. The essential needs of vast number of people in the developing countries for food, clothing, shelter, jobs are not being met. So basically dapat ma-meet nito yung natin basic needs, no, like food, shelter, and even jobs, no. And beyond their basic needs, these people have legitimate aspirations for an improved quality of life. Kailangan, in order for us to have a sustainable development or progressive development, kailangan ma-achieve natin yung satisfaction ng bawat tao with regards to their basic needs. Like, for example, food. Are we sustained about the food we eat? Or naanohan ba tayo? Is our food enough for our country? Food production? So, ika nga, like for example, may mga issues na lumalabas within the Philippines na kinukulang na raw tayo sa bigas. So, we have to import from another country. And sometimes kasi when you say sustainable development, this is what we call it the self-sufficiency. No? No? So, a world in which poverty and inequity are endemic will always be prone to ecological and other crises. Sustainable development requires meeting the basic needs of all and extending to all the opportunity to satisfy the aspirations for a better life. Kailangan ma-fulfill ng ating ng ano, sabihin natin ng ating bansa yung basic needs ng bawat tao, no? Like for example, food. Yeah. Okay. Then we have living standards that can go beyond the basic minimum are sustainable only if consumption standards everywhere have regard for long-term sustainability. Yet many of us live beyond the world's ecological needs. For instance, our patterns of energy use. Perceived needs are socially and culturally determined, and sustainable development requires the promotion of values that encourage consumption standards that are within the bounds of the ecological possible and to which all can reasonably aspire. Economic growth. Meeting essential needs depends on, in a part of on achieving full growth potential. And sustainable development clearly requires economic growth in places where such needs are not being met. Elsewhere, it can be consistent with economic growth, provided that the content of growth reflects the broad principles of sustainability and non-exploiting of others. But growth itself by itself is not enough. Hindi enough, no? High levels of productive activity and widespread poverty can exist now and can endanger the environment. Hence, sustainable development requires that societies meet human needs both by increasing productive potential and ensuing equitable opportunities for all. Say, yun no? Kailangan ma-meet ng natin, yung society, yung basic needs, no? And increasing its production. Sa food, medyo kailangan natin improve yan. Shelter, of course, to reduce, of course, the overcrowding places, we must provide shelters for those who are living in the slum area. No? So, at least provide them some housing and then, of course, kaya lang kasi may, mga tao ngayon medyo picky na rin. Okay, economic distribution. Expansion of numbers can increase the pressure on resources and slow the rise in living standards in areas where deprivation is widespread through the issue is not merely of population size but of the distribution of resources. Sustainable development can only be pursued if demographic developments are in harmony with the changing productive potential of the ecosystem. Agriculture development, ito ang kailangan natin i-focus din. Settled agriculture, the diversion of water courses, extraction of minerals, the emission of heat and noxious gases into the atmosphere, commercial forests, and genetic manipulations are all examples of human intervention in the natural systems during the course of development. Until recently, such interventions were small in scale and their impact limited. Today's interventions are more drastically in scale and impact and more threatening to life support systems, both locally and globally. These need to happen, not to happen. And at a minimum, sustainable development must not endanger the natural systems that support life on Earth, like the atmosphere, the waters, the soil, and the living beings. Population. As I discussed this earlier in the previous videos, population is one of the most controversial issues. No? Growth has no set limits in terms of population or resources used beyond which lies economic disaster. Different limits holds for the use of energy, materials, water, and land. Many of these will manifest themselves in the form of the rising cost and diminishing returns. Now, rather than in the form of any sudden loss of a resources, the accumulation of knowledge and the development of technology can enhance the carrying capacity of the resource base, but the ultimate limits there are, and sustainability requires that long before these are reached, the world must ensure equitable access to the constrained resources and reorient technological efforts to relieve the presume. So the development tends to simplify ecosystems and to reduce their diversity of species. And species once extinct are not renewable. The loss of plant and animal species can greatly limit the options of future generations. So, sustainable development requires the conservation of plants and animal species. Equity and common interest. So, sustainable development has been described here in general terms. How are individuals in the real world to be persuaded or made to act in the common interest? The answer lies partly in education, institutional development, and law enforcement. But many problems of resources, or resource depletion, and environmental stress arise from the disparity, no? Disparities in economic and political power. An industry may get away with unacceptable levels or air and water pollution because the people who bear the brunt of it are poor and unable to complain effectively. A forest may be destroyed, madaling masira, by excessive filling because the people living there have no alternatives because the timber contractors generally have more influence than the forest dwellers. So, kung mapapansin nyo, no, unti-unti na rin kasi nagkakaroon ng, ng depletion sa ating mga resources. And this is why we should need to evaluate ourselves. And of course, paano tayo magpo-progress niyan? Paano tayo mag-improve kung hindi natin ano yung mga ano, 'di ba? Like for example, pa konti resources natin. Anong gagawin natin, 'di ba? So kailangan we have to act now. No? Okay. Ecological interactions do not respect the boundaries of the individual ownership and political jurisdiction. Thus, in a watershed, okay, the ways in which a farmer farm up the slope uses land directly affect the runoff on farms downstream. The irrigation practices, pesticides, and fertilizers used on one farm affect the productivity of neighboring others, especially among small farms. Totoo yan, no? Kasi mag-spread yan widely among the land, eh. No? And sometimes yung cut-off ng mga downstreams, yung mga irrigation systems. Now, the efficiency of factory boilers determines its rate of emission of soot and noxious chemicals and affect all who live and work around it. The hot water discharged by a thermal power plant into a river or local sea affects the catch of all who fish locally. So it is not that there is one set of villains and another of victims. All would be better off if each person took into account the effects of his or her acts upon others. But each is unwilling to assume that others will behave in this socially desirable fashion. And hence, all continue to pursue narrow self-interest. Communities or government can compensate for this isolation through laws, education, taxes, subsidies, and other methods. While enforced laws and strict liabilities legislations can control harmful side effects. Most important, effective participation in decision-making processes by local communities can help them articulate and effectively enforce their common interest. So, the enforcement of common interest often suffers because areas of political jurisdictions and areas of impact do not coincide. Energy policies is one jurisdiction cause asset precipitation in another. The fishing policies of one state affect the fish catch of another. No supranational authorities exist to resolve such issues, and the common interest can only be articulated through international cooperation. So, in the same way, the ability of a government to control its national economy is reduced by growing international economic interactions. For example, foreign trade in commodities makes issues of carrying capacities and resource scarcities an international concern. If economic power and benefits of trade were more equally distributed, common interest would be generally recognized, but the gains from the trade are unequally distributed. The patterns of trade in, say sugar, affects not merely a local sugar producing sector, but the economies and the ecology of the many developing countries that depends heavily on this product. So there you have it, and we're done with module 11. Up next, we will be discussing module 12 on the next video. And of course, don't forget to click like and subscribe to my channel. And please press the notification buttons for more um, settings. Now, so with that, we're done with chapter 11, and I'll see you on module 12. Okay, so ciao.